Hi, everybody. Today's Tuesday, February 24th, 2025, and our dear friend, Carl Wilkerson is here with us. Welcome back, Larry.
Good to be with you, Nima. It's been at least what 3, 4 days.
Please hit like button, helping us reaching more people. And Larry, let me start with finally, you remember during the Biden administration, there was a crucial moment in which Pentagon interfered. That was the moment that Starmer went to Washington meeting with Joe Biden, asking to let these long-range missiles to be sent to Ukraine. Pentagon said no, there is no way to go in that direction. That would be hugely problematic and escalatory if we do that. Finally, after sending all these weapons to the Middle East, to the West Asia, we have heard from the Pentagon. And they're somehow saying that they warned Trump of extended war plans, against Iran, because the war can backfire. This war can drag on. And here is what was reported on Fox News considering Pentagon.
Donald Trump's top general is highlighting the potential risks with striking Iran. Now, Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane has warned it could lead to the possibility of a prolonged conflict in the region. It comes after the president said last week that if no deal is reached over Iran's nuclear program within the next 10 days, he could take military action. Now, according to that Axios report, they wrote, quote, while Kane was all in on the Venezuela operation, he has been more cautious in the discussions around Iran, two sources said. While Kane sees the stakes of a major operation in Iran as higher, with a greater risk for entanglement and American casualties. President Trump hit back on Truth Social, writing, quote, the story does not attribute this vast wealth of knowledge to anyone and is 100% incorrect. General Kane, like all of us, would like not to see war, but if a decision is made on ongoing against Iran at a military level, it is his opinion that it will be something easily won. President Trump went on to say he'd prefer to make a deal, but if they don't, it will be a very bad day for Iran.
Yeah. What is your assessment of what's going on, Larry? Do you think that the military part of the government, Pentagon, is somehow getting somewhere to make Donald Trump himself understand what would happen if Donald Trump decides to attack Iran?
It should. Let me preface my remarks with that. It should. The Pentagon should be urging caution, and for some different reasons that we can go into if you want to, but I don't think it is. I think this is a story ginned up by the crowd around Trump. Don't know if Kane was complicit in it or not. I doubt it. But I think it's a story that continues to make what Trump wants to do with regard to diplomacy even more problematic. And by that, I mean, I think Trump likes that problematic nature of his diplomacy because he feels like it gives him an advantage and it puts his opponent at a disadvantage. So he's got all manner of people out there conjecturing in one way or the other in order to make it even a more impossible task for Iran to make any kind of intelligence assessment as to whether or not an attack is coming. And if you've noticed some of his other remarks about maybe I'll just sneak up on them and tap them a little bit. And then if they come back to negotiations and are complied, I'll tap them no more. But if they don't, I'll really tap them and that sort of thing. I think he thinks that that is a part, and some of the people around him agree, of his negotiating tactic. And so we're going to get all manner of information until it happens or it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And Fox is a conduit for a lot of this to and fro, of course.
Yeah. But do we know that what is the understanding on the part of the whole administration? You think that J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard would be in that, would agree with Donald Trump with the attack on Iran? These two people were somehow more sane than the other, characters.
That's hard to say in the Trump administration. Sanity to a degree. I think Vance and Gabbard are the two people in the administration who, of all the rest of the yahoos, would be most apt to counsel caution. And maybe even in the case of Vance, to counsel some of the things I was revealing this morning, for example, on another podcast. To wit, we have somewhere around 35 to 40%, depending on who you listen to and what you count, arrayed of our military might, arrayed around or in the proximity of Iran right now. That means that, one, we are neglecting combatant commander strategies all over the globe. That means that they cannot carry out their combatant command missions of presence, especially important with regard to allies like Japan. They cannot carry out their freedom of navigation missions, fairly important, because regardless of what people in the world think about freedom of navigation, it is, in fact, the United States Navy that assures freedom of navigation, sometimes to its own interest, to be true, but all the time it ensures freedom of navigation. I'll give you an example. When we conducted an exercise recently in China, and we did some things to passage points like the Straits of Malacca, like the Persian Gulf in the Strait of Hormuz, like the Bab el-Mandeb in the Red Sea. Guess who? And this was an eclectic team. The whole world virtually was represented, major powers and economic interests on this group. Guess who was asked to come first by everyone, including China? The United States Navy, because we have a reputation, deservedly, I think, most of the time, for protecting travel on the high seas. Now, Trump has put this in major jeopardy with his strikes in international waters against so-called drug dealers and such. And he's put it in jeopardy for other reasons too. But nonetheless, we are the assurer of freedom of the seas. We can't do that in many very important areas right now. Were it to be a problem, we would really have a significant issue. And then lastly, we are really hurting in terms of people. And I know Hegseth has been lying about that periodically, particularly with regard to the Army, primarily because he's taken something like 11% of middle category for people into the Army, which are not good soldiers. They're not people that you'd want to muster for combat, for sure. Think McNamara's 100,000, for example, in Vietnam. So there are all kinds of problems with this, besides the fact we're spending the taxpayers' money to the billions and billions of dollars with all this military arrayed around and in the vicinity of Iran. And every day it's more and more and more, which doesn't seem to concern Trump. But I'm sure it probably concerns the Pentagon, and it probably concerns the Congress, those few who do think of the budget from time to time. So all of these things are impacting what is going on here, and all of these things will impact what Trump's decision is more and more the longer he delays. And you've got things like moon and light and weather in general and other parameters for the attack being ideal or not so ideal. We had real problems with this, for example, with George W. Bush in 2003, because people were saying, some people in the administration were saying, well, maybe we shouldn't do this right now. And the military came back and said, well, we've got to do it because the heat. We can't delay it any longer. We've got to do it. We've got to do it now or not do it at all for at least a long period of time until the heat subsides again, at least somewhat. So there are all manner of things that are going on right now that might impact a decision one way or the other, not least of which is the mercurial nature of Donald Trump, who, I return to my original point that I've been making everywhere that I can, Donald Trump does not want a war. He's caught between Bibi Netanyahu on the one hand and Miriam Adelson and others like her on the other. The Jewish lobby, very powerful, very moneyed, and absolutely essential for his reelection and essential for the Republicans holding the two houses of Congress in the midterms on one side, and he's got Bibi Netanyahu on the other, whose arch opponent, if you will, potentially Naftali Bennett, has declared Turkey the next enemy after Iran, letting the cat out of the bag as to the greater Israel business, which I'm sure really excited Doha, Abu Dhabi, Riyadh, and elsewhere in the Arab world. So we've got all these factors playing on this, in addition to this is really fraught with potential for disaster. Let me give you one example. Yesterday, I saw a map displaying where each of our ships was at that particular time. 3 of them were in the Gulf itself. 3 naval combatants were in the Gulf itself. Now, that's an accurate map, and it came from New York Times or someone like that. That's an accurate map, and I suspect it probably is. Those ships are dead. They're dead. No sailor in the United States Navy, when I was a member of the Pacific Command, the largest command in the repertoire of the United States, the force provider for Central Command, a little pipsqueak command at that time, we would never have conscience putting a carrier in the Gulf. We've done that since then. And most of the time, we wouldn't put a warship there. The water is too shallow. The turn radius is too great. The seas are too narrow. The strait is constricted. You die if you go into the Persian Gulf, and you're up against any kind of enemy that knows what it's doing. And I beg your pardon, Iran now knows what it's doing big time. So each one of those ships is gone if it starts. Who wants to see, especially if you're a president, front page, above the fold, right side of the New York Times, USS sunk with all hands on board in Persian Gulf or wherever? This whole thing is fraught with problems, Nima. And all of those problems in one way or another are probably reaching Trump, either through Kane, through the military, not reaching him through these asinine generals on the outside who are claiming that everything will be copacetic and wonderful and everything, and who probably have heavy investments, money investments in this being the case. But through real advice, Vance, Gabbard, perhaps others, he's getting these different forms of counsel. And I think he's thinking twice and thrice about what he's contemplating.
Larry, the U.S. aircraft carrier Gerald Ford is close to Israel, but is dealing with a problem, with a huge problem with the sewage, with the toilets. It's not just with the toilets, but the problem in terms of disease that they can cause these sort of problems in that. And do you think that Donald Trump would use it to defend Israel, or he's gonna, if he attacks, he's gonna use it to attack? What is the purpose of Gerald Ford?
Let me tell you another problem it has, Nima, that the Navy's never going to admit to, nor the president, if he even knows. They don't have enough sailors. They do not have enough sailors. The Navy has been so short on its recruiting, its reserve component, which is necessary to things like we're contemplating here, is 40% short. 40%. That's almost 1 in 2 positions not filled. It's heavily short in hospitals, doctors, nurses, and other things. And that's the Navy. That's the Navy's essential medical complement. You have got sailors on the Ford, and you've got sailors on other ships that have been on there for 9 months or longer. You're hot bunking ships, actually. You're taking one ship and bringing it into Norfolk, for example, and you're taking the crew off for 2 weeks. They've been on it for 9 months. And you're basically putting them back on another ship to go on another deployment with very little shore time with their families or anyone else. The sailors are getting worn out, and they're getting tired of this kind of routine. So you've got problems like that on these ships too. They're not going to be publicized so far as they can stop them from being publicized, but you've got these problems. When Trump, for example, talks about going to 330 ships in the U.S. Navy, it's a joke. It's a joke even in the Navy, because they know they couldn't man those ships. They'd be in dry dock. They'd sit in port because they couldn't sail. Or they'd do like they're doing now. They'd rotate these crews. And they'd sail the ship, rotate the crew, and sail the ship and rotate the crew, and the crew would get out after 3 years. Or, it's terrible on morale. So that's another aspect of Venezuela and now Iran. You've put these people at sea, and you've put them at sea a long time, and you've got morale going down. Regardless of how many admirals come out, like the one the other day, the 3-star the other day, oh, we can do Iran in a day. We can finish Iran off. These people are crazy. They're nuts. They're not going to do it in a day. They're not going to do it in 3 days. If they come in with all guns firing, as it were, if they come in dramatically and instantaneously and almost what Colin Powell would have said, in an attempt to create the decisiveness in the first moments of battle, then maybe they might survive fairly well. I mean that. They might survive fairly well. They're not going to accomplish their objectives, and they're going to kill a lot of people, but they might survive fairly well. If they come in piecemeal, they're going to come in like almost any military coming in piecemeal, and they're going to get what any military coming in piecemeal normally gets. They're going to get heavily attrited a little bit at a time. And then you say, woo, I got to go bigger. Ooh, well, I got to go bigger. Kind of like we did in Vietnam, a little bit here. Oh, that didn't work. A little bit here. Not working yet. A little bit more. Now we'll see. And then you come in with everything you've got. We never did that in Vietnam. And had we done that in Vietnam, other than nuclear weapons, I'm not sure it would have changed anything. So you see what I'm talking about here with regard just basic Clausewitzian principles about the use of military force, about which Trump knows nothing, absolutely zero. His head is vacant when it comes to military strategy and military operations and military tactics. All he knows is, oh, we killed that guy. Oh, good, you got him. With regard to Qassam, the Iranian head of the IRGC.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
General Soleimani.
Yeah, Soleimani. Qassam Soleimani, wasn't it? Yeah. And was it al-Baghdadi out there in Syria? That's what he knows. Oh, a strike, we kill somebody. That's good. That's really good. I don't think he knows squat about real military operations. And frankly, we haven't had a real military operation, the kind Iran will occasion if we're smart, since, roughly Korea. Maybe the first Gulf War, but I wouldn't even put the first Gulf War in there because Saddam Hussein was not much for strategy. And that was a pretty easy war, really. But maybe Korea, World War II, certainly. Maybe we had those kinds of campaigns in those wars. We haven't had one of those in a long, 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 long time. And by the way, we haven't won a war in a long, long time. And this is not going to be an exception. So this is all weighing on Trump. It's weighing on him, and word is getting through from people who have a little more circumspection, a little more prudence, a little more concern with regard to the country, that this might not be a cakewalk. Indeed, it might not even be close to a cakewalk.
Larry, I think if they decide to attack, it would be, an attack that they would plan that the initial moment of attack would be somehow surprising for Iranians. I don't know if that's possible with the level of information that Iran has, with the level of, that the Iranian army is prepared right now. And they have everything. They have Russia and China even informing them if something is happening. That would make it hugely difficult to surprise Iran with an attack.
You're not going to achieve strategic surprise. Absolutely, you're not. You're not going to achieve operational surprise. You're not. You might achieve a degree of tactical surprise because you can pick your hour, time, darkness, date, all the things that go along with that. But the tactical surprise would be only momentary. And if I were Iran, I don't think they'll do this. Maybe you could help me here. I don't think they'll do this, but if I were Iran, the moment I even smell gunpowder in the air, I would destroy Israel. That would be my first, other than defending myself from what might be coming in from the empire, my first offensive action would be to destroy Bibi Netanyahu's Israel. Just destroy it. And I don't think we could stop that. I really don't. That would be, to me, the supreme act of strategic genius on the part of Iran, to ignore everything else other than holding up a hand, like, defend that, to go after with everything they have offensively, not Doha, not Ras Tanura in Saudi Arabia, not the Strait, go after Israel. Maximize everything you can put on Israel and destroy it.
I think from what I've heard so far, I think the primary target would be Israel if the United States attacks. That's my understanding. I don't know what is the calculation on the part of the military, but they really think of it, that they really said that they're going to do this.
That's smart. That's very smart, because that then ultimately would deflect the United States too, because it's not defending Israel.
Larry, do you see these Arab states in the Persian Gulf using their air defense system to defend Israel after, hearing what the American ambassador to Israel said, I think all of these countries can be part of Israel, and he has no problem at all with that?
Well, one thing you could count on the Arabs to do, Nima, is to be duplicitous, disingenuous, and ultimately on the empire's side. I mean, you can almost count on that. I would be less apt to say that at this particular moment, though, because of things like Huckabee and other things, too, that are even more indicative, because I understand right now that there has even been a sort of a titular peace declared between Abu Dhabi, Doha, and Riyadh. That is to say, they're all seeing eye to eye on this issue. So another deleterious outcome of this strategy of Trump, if I dare call it that, is that he's fusing the Arabs in an unheard of opposition to Israel. And that's dangerous for Israel too. That seems to be what's happening. I mean, I even heard there's been sort of a reconciliation for the moment between Mohammed bin Zayed and Mohammed bin Salman and others that have been sort of at loggerhead here lately over everything from the Houthis to support of Iran or anger at Iran or neutrality or whatever. There's been, and some of them are really concerned about what they're seeing, ultimately what they're seeing in Gaza, because they don't see how it's going to be any good at all for the Palestinians, not because they're interested in the Palestinians, because ultimately they're interested in their own streets and the people in their streets. I said this to one other podcaster because I didn't mention you, but I said, there has even been some talk within Iran in circles about allowing the Palestinians, or a good percentage of them, to come to Iran. I even cited Cyrus the Great and how he took care of the Jews, so much so that in Hebrew they use their term for Messiah to describe Cyrus the Great. And I talked about the 50,000 or so Jews living in Iran peacefully right now, having a pretty good life, as one can have a good life there, with the sanctions and all. And I said, wow, wouldn't that be interesting if the Iranians did something like that and robbed Jared Kushner of his clients, took the Palestinians into Iran and said, you got it, Israel. They'll take it back one day and we might help them, but you got it for now. Go ahead and build your beach resorts and everything. And at the same time, I brought to this person's attention what was happening before Israel actually did all this in Gaza. The Palestinians were going to the beach. They were enjoying their beach. They had good times on their beach. It was a resort for them. Now you're talking about turning it into a Trump golden kingdom. Do you really think they're going to allow the Palestinians to use that? Do you really think they're going to allow the Palestinians to live in the apartments they're talking about building on top of the rubble and the 100,000 dead men, women, and children in the rubble? Do you really think they're going to let the Palestinians live there? Of course they're not. Maybe if one of them's a billionaire or got lots and lots of money other than that, maybe then, but otherwise they're not going to live there. They're not going to live there. It's going to be Kushner and Trump's buds who live there. It's going to be Witkoff's buds who live there. So if you did this, Iran, what a marvelous change it would present to this colossal colonial project in Gaza right now. And oh, by the way, I checked up last night on the ceasefire. They have not honored the ceasefire for a single 24-hour period in Gaza. They have killed as many as 200 in a single day, and they've averaged 25 to 30 every day of the ceasefire. I still say ceasefire must not be translatable into Hebrew.
Larry, do you think that the Israelis, basically the Netanyahu administration, feel that if the war happens, that would be mostly Iranians would be focused on the United States and Persian Gulf Arab states, or that's why they're not that much, last time that the United States was about to attack Iran, we've heard from Netanyahu that we are not prepared, all of that. It seems that this time around they feel that they can be outside of the conflict. They can be somehow, not that much influenced by a war if it happens, because Iran would be busy with the U.S. attacks and the Persian Gulf Arab states and attacking. I don't know if that would be the strategy on the part of Iranians, but somehow in Israel they feel this way.
Well, that's, I think, to Iran's advantage, because I think, as you and I discussed in the opening minutes, I think Iran would be very, very smart to concentrate on Israel, at least initially. Hold up one hand to defend as best you can against the United States and others, F-35s, whatever. But concentrate your real Schwerpunkt, as the Germans would say, concentrate your missiles on Israel and destroy Israel. I believe that they could probably, given what happened in the Beautiful War, I believe that if their intelligence has been improved to the extent that they can target at least 80% of the guts of Israel's ability to defend itself, and then expand that into everything they can get their hands on or their ballistic missiles on, they could probably do it in a matter of 96 hours. Just a fusillade, one after the other at the targets that they know are critical. If you're into that 96 hours and you've, with your left hand, as it were, held off the United States to the extent where they're not really pulverizing you to the extent that they possibly could, and you've destroyed Israel, where are you then? 96 hours into that, maybe a little bit longer into that, where are you then? What's the United States going to do? Israel is kaput. Israel is done. Israel is finished. You can't even get them on the phone. Your people are dead too, because we got lots of people in Israel. That would be, in my view, a triumph for Iran. And it would be one that we would find difficult to deal with, particularly if they had enough assets left to deal some blows at us, Saudi Arabia, and others too. I just don't know what their stockpiles are. People keep, Scott Ritter, Larry Johnson, others keep saying that they have this incredible load of missiles. I haven't counted them. I don't know what that load is. I suspect it is fairly formidable given Russia and China's now trilateral agreement with Iran.
But we know, at least we can predict, what does the United States have to attack Iran? At least 600, 700, Tomahawk missiles. I don't know how long does it take to deplete all of these assets and how they can.
The Tomahawks would be the last thing I'd be concerned with. What I'd be most concerned with is the F-35s and similar, and what they can do and what they can deliver and what they can coordinate delivery of. I remember, I'll just give you one example. My Marine Corps War College seminar and I went to our first visit to the United States Forces Korea when General Gary Luck was in charge. And we had about an hour session with the commander himself, General Gary Luck. You may recall that during his time and during that time, actually Secretary Perry was there too. Secretary Perry actually was kind enough to give us an hour with him, unscripted. He volunteered to give us an hour with him after our session with the Commander-in-Chief, General Luck. So we had both the Secretary of Defense and the commander on the peninsula for the United States Forces to give us their talk. One of my Marines asked him a question, and I'm getting to the point here, pardon my length. What happens when those cannons come out, those howitzers, those artillery pieces come out of the caves and fire at least, because this was the estimate by intelligence, Korean and U.S., at least 10 rounds each on Seoul? And we're talking a lot of artillery here, Nima. We're talking in those mountains and in those caves, thousands of artillery pieces. Well, the plan was, of course, we were going to launch every air set that the South Koreans and we had on the peninsula and in Guam and elsewhere. We were going to launch and we were going to kill those cannons as they came out to shoot. We knew we wouldn't get them until maybe the 8th or 9th or 10th round, or maybe a little bit later. So we're talking about roughly 30,000 rounds landing on Seoul, the greater metropolitan area. So my Marine asked the question, what's your concern there? Are your planes going to get, this is if everything works. Are your planes going to get airborne? Are they going to get the ordnance on target in time to get them before they fire that 11th and that 12th and that 13th round? No. Well, what do you think is going to happen? Well, Seoul is going to be really in trouble. And you know what I'm most concerned with? He said there's 250,000 Americans living in the greater Seoul area, and a lot of them are going to be casualties. There's 50,000 Chinese, there's 45,000 Japanese, and he went on down the list of non-combatants in the Seoul greater metropolitan area. And so we're looking at him and we're saying, well, you really don't want this thing to start, do you? No. No, we don't. But we're prepared. You got to say that if you're a military guy. And he was right. They were prepared. They were prepared, but it was going to be, in a certain extent, certainly for the citizens of Seoul, it was going to be a Pyrrhic victory because a lot of them were going to be dead. And the North Koreans actually developed a strategy, we found out later, that they would do something like that and then stop and then offer an armistice in order to save the rest of Seoul. Interesting wrinkle there, too, which we brought up with him on a subsequent visit. A different general. But all to say that you never know. You just never know what's going to happen. And if the enemy is really clever and has the kind of capacity that, for example, North Korea did then with its howitzers, the best you can do is maybe keep the entire complex from collapsing. That is to say, South Korea. We subsequently asked the question, and we asked this of Dr. Perry back in the United States. What happens if they get a nuclear weapon? Woo, we're there now. So how do you change your strategy now? Don't know, but it's an example of how no plan outlasts its first contact with the enemy. No plan. The moment you drop the first bomb, your plan begins to deteriorate. And you have to ask yourself every step of the way. We usually ask the wrong question. Believe me, I've been there and I've seen this happen. In war game after war game, I've seen it happen, especially. You walk up and you say, how's it going, to the lieutenant commander or the colonel or whatever? Oh, it's going according to plan. Wrong. Stand up from your computer. We're going to give you a lesson. Going according to plan? That's not what we're asking you. Are you accomplishing your mission? That's what we're asking you. Well, how do I know that? We haven't even gotten into it. Well, you better know that, because that's the salient question. Are you accomplishing your mission? It could be going according to plan and you could be losing your ass. Get my point? And that's what happens with the Korean War, and that could happen here too. And, you know, people who are asking themselves, well, everything's going to plan. F-35s here, Tomahawk. That's fine. You got Tomahawks here, F-35s here, F-16s here, F-15s here. You got a sub here. You got an aircraft carrier here. You got sorties generated here. You got tanking going on up here. Everything's going according to plan. Israel has been destroyed. Is everything going according to plan?
Yeah.
This is how smart military commanders think. Smart ones. Smart ones like Doug McGregor. Smart ones like me.
Larry, today I tried to push a little bit. I tried to ask, you know, force Professor Morandi to answer my question. What would change if the United States attacks in terms of the doctrine, the strategy of Iran considering nuclear weapons? And he just tried to answer the question, but my understanding of what I've heard in Iran, what he said so far, is that Iran would be a nuclear, you know, would produce nuclear weapons if the United States attacks Iran. It doesn't matter how long does it take to just get out of the war, or the war, it may take years of conflict between the United States, Israel, Iran, and all of this. But I think Iran, the outcome would be a nuclear Iran, a country that has nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs. I don't know why does the United States, if the whole concept of this conflict, this war, would be avoiding Iran of achieving nuclear bombs. So why would you go that far to force them? Just it's somehow, maybe for some of us it's so difficult to understand it. But after all, just look at Russia. What has happened to Russia? Just remember what was the Russian army before the conflict in Ukraine started. It was a defensive force. Look at what Russia is today.
It's an excellent observation and an excellent question, and I'll throw some other rhetoric into it. Last night I listened to Netanyahu speak in Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew, so I had to pay attention to the subscripts. But when he speaks in Hebrew, I pay particular attention, because generally in Hebrew, he reveals a lot more of his true self and his true strategy, if you will, than he does when he speaks in English, because the English is always aimed at his American audience. He finished his remarks, which were desultory, damning, and vicious in many respects, talking about what would happen when the United States attacked. He finished his remarks with, and I checked it twice. I ran the tape twice to make sure I got the subscript right. I wish I did speak Hebrew so I could understand the viciousness of what he said, other than in English, a second language. But what he said was, in essence, and if it does go bad, they will get the biggest surprise of their lives. That can only mean one thing. That can only mean one thing. He's going to unleash a nuclear weapon, or two or three. That's all that could have meant. I
think
wouldn't be surprised right now, Nima, if the bombs aren't already being moved, or perhaps are already in place. And that would mean we would have to be knowledgeable of that, I think, because we got people all over that little country right now.
But how far that could help Donald Trump and his position in the United States? Because after all, we know that Donald Trump is somehow, so much obsessed with his position, with what would be the outcome of his presidency. Does he care about that? Does he care about what would be the future for the United States and what would be the outcome of his administration for the future of the United States?
I think you have to catch him at the moment. You catch him at some moments, apparently, unless he's just being completely dissembling and duplicitous. He's worried about the midterms, and he's worried about the Republican Party and his base, and he's worried about his own place in history. Other times, he doesn't seem to be anything but oblivious of all of that. He doesn't give a hang about the Republican Party. He doesn't care about whether they win or lose the midterms. He doesn't even care about whether or not he allows the midterms to happen or not. And I think there's a very good chance that he might make a move to keep them from happening. I don't know how to judge him based on that kind of mercurial nature, especially with an answer to the kind of question you just asked. But I do think it makes him all that much more dangerous in the sense of what might evolve out of this real mess we've got, and that he's largely made with Iran. Let's face it. In his first term, he was confronted with a nuclear agreement that did almost everything, if not everything, at least for 25 years, that we wanted done with regard to Iran's nuclear program. What did he do? Against international law, against the other partners in the agreement, all allies except for Russia and China, against almost every sentiment in the world, I would vouchsafe, he eradicated it. He canceled without so much as a fare thee well. I don't think he thought about it for a moment. I don't think he even got any decent briefings on it. He just wanted to make a political point that Obama had failed in what was the diplomatic achievement of the first quarter of the 21st century was a mistake, and Obama had made it. That black man in the White House had made that mistake. Should never have been there in the first place. Very idea of a black man being in the White House shouldn't have happened. That's why he did it. He didn't do it based on sound strategic principle, sound diplomatic reasoning, sound national security interests. He did it for Donald Trump, and he did it to spite Obama. Now he realizes some of that, I think, and he is actually trying to conceive a deal, prima facie anyway, that looks a lot like the JCPOA, with maybe wiping out the 25-year moratorium or something like that. Don't know. I don't even know if he's serious about doing that, but that seems to be the thrust of his negotiations with Witkoff and Kushner, whatever other people he's got in there. So where are we? We're at a point where we're dealing with a madman in many respects, and he's still there, and he's still got his finger on the trigger. Try to predict the outcome of that. I'm just going to be thankful if tonight, when the State of the Union commences, he doesn't say, as my president said in a similar type environment, ladies and gentlemen, tonight bombs are falling on Iran, in his case. We've just commenced Operation Avenge the Angels, or whatever the hell they're going to call it. Maybe they already got a name for it. I don't know. I don't care. Those names are stupid. They come out of computers and out of other people's stupid heads. Operation Enduring Freedom. Oh. Operation Just Cause. I thought that was the stupidest freaking thing we ever did. Call it Operation Just Cause. It was the largest no-knock drug bust in history. That's what it was. On a guy that we were backing in his drug dealing. But we'll call it something if we have anybody left to call it.
Larry, I don't know if you had the time to watch with the podcast that, the interview that Tucker Carlson had with Mike Huckabee.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Sick.
Yeah. These people, Larry, the whole discussion is somehow disturbing. It's so difficult to understand Mike Huckabee and his position. But these people, do you categorize them as religious? Are they really what they want us to see them, the way that they want us to see them? Are they the way that because he was whole argument of his basis, his foundation of thinking was that in that verse that was Genesis 15, Genesis 16, and it's all religious, and
Yep.
you are an official working with the government in a system that separates what you think in terms of your personal understanding of your religion and what you do as an official for the government. And these people, how do you understand these people?
Welcome to the latest iteration of the Great Awakening in America. We've had several. Some historians will say 3, 4, 5, whichever. This is the latest one, and it has captured people like Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee and a host of others, and apparently Peter Hegseth in the Pentagon, because he is holding prayer meetings with people in the Pentagon, civilian and military, into which he introduces his personal pastor, who believes that women are good for nothing but pumping out babies, shouldn't vote, should never have gotten the vote. I mean, this is what you're talking about, Nima. These are troglodytes. These are people who don't understand that Jesus Christ came along and repudiated the Old Testament. That's really what he did. When he threw the Pharisees, Sadducees, moneylenders, money changers, and other assholes out of the temple, the only time that I can find in the Bible that Christ actually lost his temper, when he threw them out, he was repudiating what Ted Cruz and Mike Huckabee believe today in the 21st century. And that is that Israel is the chosen people, and that if you align yourself with the chosen people, even if you're the ambassador of your state to them, you must do this, you must align yourself with them, then you're going to be saved. You're going to be with the God's chosen people. And they're the most powerful. They're the most ingenious. They're the most entrepreneurial. They make the best weapons. They're the best people on the face of the earth. And you better be with them. You better be with them. You better go to the Temple Mount and agree with Ben-Gvir when he wants to eradicate Al-Aqsa and build the temple anew. You better kiss the wall. You better wear the old top hat. You better do all of that stuff. That's Mike Huckabee. He is not our ambassador to Israel. He is Bibi Netanyahu's ambassador in Israel, who happens to wear the trappings of a U.S. citizen. It's disgusting. But Cruz is too. And so are all of these people. These people Hegseth is bringing to the Pentagon, who are citing the Old Testament as justification for killing women, children, babies. We did all of the way. Nuremberg did away with all of that, I thought. We created international law to check man's instincts to do these heinous deeds upon their fellow men and fellow women and babies and children and everything else. We did that. It's gone now. It's gone now, and Trump has put a rose on its coffin. And Huckabee is an emissary of that coffin and that rose. He's a traitor. He's a disgusting individual. But so is Ted Cruz. So is Lindsey Graham. So is Pete Hegseth. All these people who believe God is on their side. God, I got information for him, is on nobody's side. Least of all yours.
Yeah.
Hitler found that out.
Larry, recently I watched a podcast, Sean Ryan podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with that. He's a very, I think, one of the best podcasts out there to watch for all of our audience. And he did a talk for more than 4 hours, 4 hours and a half, with Michael Lester, who's a
Uh-oh, lost you. Come back, come back.
yeah. Can you hear me, Larry?
I got you now. Yeah, something happened
Yeah,
there.
yeah. It's something happened. I don't know what's happened.
They're after you. They're after you.
Yeah,
They're my-
maybe that could be the case. Larry, what was in this podcast? Sean Ryan asking Michael Lester, former U.S. Marine, and he said something about the political parties in the United States. He said that here is the part that he's mentioning the system in the United States. I want your take on what he said.
Okay.
I think our country is occupied. I think most of our politicians are beholden to other forces.
Do you think they even know that?
Oh, yeah, they do.
All of them?
It would be hard not to.
Do you feel like the caliber of person that's going into politics is lower caliber than before?
I think they're opportunists.
You think they go in as opportunists?
I think many of them do. I think many of them go in with all the right reasons and then get corrupted. I have a friend in Atlanta that is running. And he asked, hey, I'm running, right? I'm the challenger. I can use funding. Can you help out, right? I said, I'd love to. But I said, as a friend, I would hate to see you win. Because if you win and you go there, you will become dirty. You can't get around it. You will need to make deals with the devil. And it starts with a small one, and then a bigger one, and then a bigger one. And eventually you get 4 or 5 years down the road, you're like, I'm bought.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help it. I did it for all the right reasons. But now I owe this person that because I agreed to that, and I owe this person this because I agreed to this. And I don't think either of those are right, but I have no choice.
You're trapped.
You're trapped.
Yeah.
It's as good a disquisition on the status of the empire as anyone else I've seen has given. And I'll call your attention to a book I think I have before. Mary Beard just put out, one of the great Latin classicists, Latin as in terms of weeny, weedy, wiki, o mores, o temporis, the Latin language. It's called 12 Caesars. And it's about Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon and going into the Senate despite the warnings, being assassinated, the civil wars that followed, Octavius being triumphant in those civil wars, becoming the first emperor, and going through the emperors that Suetonius wrote about, the Roman historian, 12 of them, all the way through Domitian. That's the same period we're looking at right now in spades. It is so corrupt, so debauched, so filthy, so decadent that you can't believe it. You simply can't believe it. It rings of Epstein. It really does. I mean, you see the kind of culture Epstein emerged in and helped to create. Rome, the 12 Caesars. That's what we're talking about. That's what he was just talking about. No one can go enter any kind of entity that is in control of this body of people, this country, and not be corrupted by that evil. Even when you had an emperor, and in that 12 is Marcus Aurelius. even when you have an emperor that has a basic fundamental instinct for decency and ruling, you're corrupted. You have no idea how many people I know in the last 20 years who have, from different states, contacted me about doing exactly what that gentleman was talking about. Subsequently have done it. And I wasn't as smart as he. I actually sent them some money initially. Got elected. And if they were decent people, which I thought they were when I first met them, they left after the first term. They would not stay. And inevitably, when I would inquire, couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand it. I realized that I was not the person for that. He's right. He's right. I'll tell you another person who essentially told me that in a little bit more bureaucratic terms, but told me to my face, along with, and you can ask Ambassador Freeman, Chaz Freeman, to verify this if you like. We're both sitting there listening to him, and he told us the same thing. His name was Tom Massey.
Yeah. Depressing.
We asked, Ambassador Freeman, I think, asked the question first. I kind of asked it later in a different direction. Why are you still here then? and he said, with a smile on his face, I just like disrupting the bastards.
Good job. Yeah.
But he said, I'm not going to change anything, he said. I don't have any aspirations. I know I'm not going to change anything, but I just like disrupting them.
Yeah. But everything starts with a crack in the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to
Crack in the dam.
Yeah,
Finger.
exactly. In the dam, exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always.
Thanks for having me. Stay warm.
See you on Friday.
What is your lowest temperature? Do you know?
Here it gets something like 8-9 degrees here in Brazil.
Celsius.
Yeah, Celsius. Yeah.
Oh,
8-9 degrees. But it's not that much. It's going to be for 1 week, if I'm not, yeah. 1 week, yeah. Not more than that.
So your annual probably, what, is around 70?
It's around between, I would say, 16 and 28.
Yeah. Okay. Very livable.
Yeah. It's so good. Yeah, I would say. Yeah.
Bless you.
Thank you, Larry. See you soon. See you on Friday.
Bye-bye. Yeah. See you.